Hey, what's up, everybody? Video 44 coming at you with another video. All right, so NBA trade deadline continues to be a good one. Tomorrow is the deadline, but we got big stuff to talk about right now because Anthony Davis has moved teams once again. He is headed to the Washington Wizards. Him, along with D'Lo, Jaden Hardy, and Dante Exum, are all going to be Wizards. Marvin Bagley, AJ Johnson, Malachi Branham, 2 first-rounders and 3 second-rounders are headed to Dallas. I got to look at these contracts, see how everything looks, but I just right away, I like AD and Alex Sarr together. Alex Sarr needed a big man. AD always needs a big man as well. They both fantastic shot blockers. So, again, teams are loading up on double shot blockers. You've seen it with the Utah Jazz yesterday. You've seen it with the Wizards right now. If you don't have double-digit shot blockers in both your power forward and center spots or good center depth, the way this league is setting up, you're going to have trouble. You're going to have trouble. So this is a very interesting move. Obviously, you don't expect the Wizards to pivot to win right now since they're so far in the dumps for this season. So I would imagine there is a world where they probably shut AD down at some point. I don't think he plays many games for the Wizards this season. But going into next year, you're talking about AD. You're talking about Trae Young and the young players they got, Keontae George, Trey Johnson, Alex Sarr. Next year when they get Whitmore back, they got a lot of guys down there in Washington, a whole lot of talent, man. And I am fairly optimistic that the Washington Wizards are headed on the right track, especially with them having a bad defensive identity at this point. Bringing in AD immediately flips that on its axis, and they turn it to a rather formidable defensive team in the Eastern Conference. You're talking about Sarr and AD. AD covers so much ground. As a Laker fan, I've been watching him for 8 years. I know what he can do defensively. The question is can he stay healthy enough? The good thing is he's surrounded by a bunch of youngsters, and so that should extend his career some. And really, he can mentor Alex Sarr and help him become his best. I love that for both of them. I don't know how motivated AD is going to be to play in Washington. Obviously, Washington has a certain identity about themselves, but Trae Young is on this team, and that's going to be fun. And he could have played with Trae Young with the Lakers if we could have got him. I think that was one of the things that the Lakers were dreaming up, was kind of pairing him up with AD and LeBron. So now he gets an opportunity to play with Trae Young. I think that could be potentially a positive thing for both of them, but they're going to have to wait a half a season to really compete. Yeah, man, as a Laker fan, I think this is okay. You know, it's not amazing, but I like it on a couple of fronts for AD. If he buys in, you know what I mean? It's hard to have a vision that something is going to be good when it sucks right now. But if you have a vision for what this looks like, you know you can win games, especially in the easy East. You can win games with Trae Young, AD, Keyshawn George, Alex Sarr. That's a good mix of players if you have the vision and you can believe, what they're missing is me. What they're missing is Trae. We can come in together. We can win games with these kids. So that's what I hope AD's thinking. I'm rooting for him, obviously, as a Laker fan. That's a no-brainer. We want to see him in a good space. We want to see him healthy. And I really do think he should get back to his conditioning ways. Because I think he let his conditioning go by the wayside in Dallas. I think he should get back to who he was about 3 years ago, doing all the things that extends his career. Because he does have a chance to get out of the Eastern Conference with this team over the next 3 years. But it's going to be incumbent upon him not only to be healthy, but to take care of himself so that he can give himself the best opportunity to be healthy. And we know there's a correlation between the injury issues and him not necessarily being in tip-top shape. So that's my thing with AD. He has to get in shape. He has to reinvent himself once again. He has to be committed to being patient with a young squad, man. You know what I mean? And if you can do that, there's an opportunity in the Eastern Conference to push past people. This is his first opportunity in the Eastern Conference, if I'm not mistaken. He only played for the Pelicans, Lakers, and Mavericks. So this is going to be the first time where he really gets a chance to play against a bunch of easy teams most nights. You know what I mean? It's going to be interesting to see if he remains motivated, because that's really what it's about. Can you remain motivated? You've been a Laker for all this time. When Dallas was like a little pit stop. Barely played for the Dallas Mavericks. Can he remain motivated in Washington? I wonder. I don't know. And for the Dallas Mavericks, I mean, you're thrilled. You got 2 first-round picks and 3 second-rounders. I think some of the things that took place, look, the Jaren Jackson trade really helped the Dallas Mavericks because essentially it set the price tag on players like Anthony Davis and Jaren Jackson. And you look at teams like Washington and like Utah who have an abundance of picks, who are probably ready to pivot because they have a bunch of players that they like at this point. They don't necessarily need to continue to play the draft. As I often say, too many young players relying upon one another could equal people not developing properly. You want to have a good mix of vets at a point. When you realize you got a nice core of young players, you don't necessarily keep playing the draft. Now you start pivoting to get your players. And we saw that work with the Thunder when they pivoted away and brought in Hartenstein and AC. So I think that's kind of what Utah is doing. I think that's what Washington is doing as well. They're identified, okay, we got the young players we like. Let's bring them to vets that can help carry them to the playoffs. So it's a template that is working for teams to know when to pivot. And I think the Washington Wizards kind of have a good idea about what they want to do. The question is the players that they brought, are they sturdy? Can they stay healthy? You know, that's the question. Can AD and Trae Young stay healthy? I don't think they've proven they can. But we know when they are, they should be able to do a lot of damage, especially if the kids around them are talented, and the Washington Wizards definitely have that. So with the Mavericks, you know, as I said, they're in a good space. The players that they picked up, you don't care about none of this except for A.J. Johnson. A.J. Johnson is a sneaky, talented basketball player. I thought that the Milwaukee Bucks were idiots for moving him on to the Washington Wizards for little to nothing after drafting him in the first round when he was likely a second-round talent. But that did not take away from the fact that he was extremely young in this draft, and he could score with the best of them. His talent popped off the screen every time you saw him, which is why they reached for him in that first round. For a team like Milwaukee, who needs so much youth, who are in such a bad space, them giving up on that player was stupid. Them drafting him when they did was stupid. And Washington has so many young players at that same position that they didn't really need him. Dallas could definitely use this young guy. He is going to definitely show what he can do in Dallas next to Cooper Flagg, and he's going to be a nice, inexpensive building block for what they hope to be a rebuilding situation, I believe. I believe Dallas is flipping toward a rebuilding situation. They're definitely in a great spot now, picking up 2 first-rounders and 3 second-rounders. They really needed that. And then, of course, they got the Lakers pick as well from the Luka trade. So they have a lot of flexibility that they didn't have. I believe they're going to save a lot of money coming off of Anthony Davis here. So I think this is a good thing for the Dallas Mavericks. I know you probably wanted back a piece. But for me, I personally value A.J. Johnson as a guy who can flip. You know, I remember when the Detroit Pistons way back in the day drafted Chris Middleton, who actually is headed to Dallas in this trade as well. But they drafted Chris Middleton, and if I'm not mistaken, it was Tobias Harris. And I looked at those players, I'm like, I don't know who the hell these guys are. They're not doing nothing. The first couple of years, they weren't really much. And then they got moved to where they ended up going, and they turned into something. That's kind of the template I expect from A.J. Johnson, to take that path to where didn't do nothing in the first couple spots. He's going to land somewhere, and he's going to explode. And so I think Dallas is going to, in the long run, feel like they got a piece in this trade. I really believe that. I think he can mirror those guys in that regard. He could turn into something when he gets where he's going, and I think he's gotten somewhere. So, yeah, A.J. Johnson, this exciting young player coming off the bench for them. The rest of that stuff I'm not excited about. Middleton at this point, he's a buyout candidate in my opinion. I don't think he needs to be in that situation. And Dante Exum headed to Washington. Throw in, I think Dante's shown he could play a little bit, but the health is the thing. So, you know, those guys are all throw-ins, both headed in both directions. D'Angelo Russell, buyout candidate. I don't even know if he has a spot in the league anymore, to be honest with you. I don't think Washington's going to hold on to him. So a lot of that stuff is, you know, contract stuff. It's not even the thing as it pertains to them actually using these people or anything like that. I don't think so. I'm trying to go on Fanspo, but I'm having internet issues. I don't know why internet issues want to pop up right now when it's trade time. I didn't have no trouble prior to that, but now when it's time to talk about trades, suddenly my phone doesn't want to do its thing. But yeah, man, at the end of the day, you just love what the Dallas Mavericks are able to do, getting off Anthony Davis and turning him into not only, you know, first rounders, but a few second rounders as well. That's a hell of a load to get back for Anthony Davis, who's had the injury issues, whose value has plummeted a bit since leaving the Lakers, and you get to a point where you just have to move on. You made the trade from Luka. You can't look at it and say, well, this is what we traded for Luka. There's a lot of things that have happened in between that trade. And most importantly, you got Cooper Flag, which means that you don't have to sit in squalor like you were ultimately deserving of for trading Luka to Don. You got a stimulus package from the NBA somehow, and the kid is fantastic. So what you need to do is just make sure he has what he needs around him. And it needs to be young players. It needs to be exciting things. And you can't get that in free agency right now. You don't necessarily have the ability to trade for that, but you did have the Anthony Davis piece. And luckily enough, Utah was willing to overpay for Jaren Jackson, which sets the market for Anthony Davis and put you in a position to where you could actually get picks for AD. Because I don't think before that they could have gotten picks for AD. In fact, I'm pretty damn certain they couldn't. So sometimes things happen around the league and it just sets the market right for you, and you just have to know how to identify that and do what you need to do. And I think that the Dallas Mavericks should feel great. Feel absolutely great about that. So, as I'm trying to get on Fanspo, hopefully I can just take a look at these contracts. The word hopefully, it doesn't hold a whole lot of weight right now because this thing is just slow to load. But that's really what it is, man. That's what it is. I'd love to give you information that I just can't seem to access right now. But all in all, this is a exciting opportunity for both teams. I think Washington pivoting is the right time for that. When you see the breakout that Keyshawn George has made alone, you realize that you don't necessarily have to keep playing the draft. You don't have to. You may want to kind of, get an opportunity at a nice player in this draft. And to be honest with you, I still think they're very much in a position to get a top 3 pick this year. No doubt about it. At least a top 7 pick. But like going forward in the years in the future, at that point, it's no sense to continue to play the draft. It ain't that serious. You can pivot. And I think they've done that. The question is AD the right piece? That's the question for the Wizards. Is AD and Trae Young the right pieces? Trae Young, I have some questions about in regards to Washington. I didn't when they traded for him, but after kind of getting a chance to look at the team, the Washington Wizards, I just realized that you just have young players at that same position that really need looks. How they play with one another. Keyshawn George, for example, Trey Johnson, Bub Carrington. It's kind of hard to see those guys continue to play as well as they have once Trae Young steps into the mix. You just don't see them getting as many looks. They're not going to have as much playing time, etc. It just doesn't look like it's that possible. And that's what concerns me about what they're building. I just have a feeling you don't get the most out of those players. So does Trae Young have long for Washington if it does play out that way? We know Trae Young has always been a good assist player, but a lot of times he's been accused of being an assist player that is looking to assist off the end of, like, he's going to pass you the ball at the end of the shot clock type stuff. That kind of thing instead of being like a connective piece. But now with Anthony Davis in place, I think that changes the dynamic a bit because you're going to have to feed Anthony Davis his touches and stuff like that. I like the idea that Anthony Davis is surrounded by a lot of scoring, though, because he tends to fall asleep on the offensive end at times. I don't think his offensive duties are going to be nearly as important in this Washington mix as it was with the Lakers and the Pelicans and, of course, with the Mavericks. He can have 10 points, and the other guys are going to score. Johnson, George, Sarr, they're all going to score. So it's not as incumbent upon AD to focus so much on getting 25, 30 points for the Wizards to, in theory, win. Trae Young, obviously a big-time scorer. They're not going to need him to score like the Lakers did. And the way we were set up, it was like if he doesn't get 35 points, we're in trouble. That's just not their dynamic. So, yeah, I think from that standpoint, having him surrounded by offensive players, having him slotted next to a shot blocker, I think it really is something that could potentially, on paper, benefit AD quite a bit. So, yeah, man, that's really what it is. Now, as far as him getting his extension with this team, that's going to be the question. Does he want his extension from the Wizards? Obviously, you want your extension if you're Anthony Davis from anybody that'll pay you that. But the question is it best for the Wizards to do that? And to be honest with you, it's not the craziest thing in the world to think that he may get it, because they still have a lot of players on rookie contracts. And it may not be necessary for them to pay those kids anytime soon because of it. So you can still keep your core, in theory, of those young players I've already mentioned, and give AD his money, give Trae Young his money. They should still be able to do that. Now, in the long run, when it's time to pay those people, do you have to move those contracts, and will that be difficult to move? I suppose you just say you cross that bridge when you arrive at it, but I do think it's something that you should probably be thinking about if you're the Washington Wizards. Well before you get to that point, you want to have some idea of what that looks like when it's time to pay Sarr, when it's time to play George. So for me, I'm not entirely confident that the future is going to entail those guys being with the team after signing their extensions, but I do think in the short term you would expect they could get their extensions with the Wizards. I do believe that you can expect to get them. The question is, do they stay there? I don't really think so. Not after that. I think those guys get moved, or they're gonna be forced to move some of their young players, which could be a nightmare depending on how well they do in this particular draft. Let's say they get the first pick in the draft this year. That could really become a situation, especially if that player is, say, Peterson or something like that. It can get weird for their cap situation over the next 3 years. So that's just something that I'm thinking off the top of my head. They don't necessarily have to play out that way. There's a lot of different steps that have to happen between now and then. But I will tell the Wizards this. You're going to need Sarr's money. You're definitely going to need George's money. Those other kids, we'll see how it plays out. I'd imagine Johnson's going to be fine. Bub is already showing he's solid, but not superstar solid, but very solid. So we'll see. But with those two, George and Sarr, you'd better have some money ready for those young fellas, or you're going to lose them for sure. I can tell you that right now. So, yeah, man, my phone is not accessing Fanspo right now. I'm not able to see what the contracts are there and how much money people have saved. But from what I understand, the Dallas Mavericks saved a significant amount of money making this trade. That much I can say for certain. How much? If my other phone would tell me, I would tell you. That's really where we're at. So, yeah, man, a bit frustrated here. I'm trying to filibuster a little bit so we can get this information, but phone issues. So, but at the end of the day, man, you got to feel good. Dallas should feel really good right now. You can start the process of rebuilding, and that's what that team really needed, in my opinion. A rebuilding situation. Instead of kicking the can down the road, you get D'Angelo Russell off your roster for something. And that's important as well, because they had benched him completely, and you just wondered if he had turned into a non-tradable piece because of it. I thought that was a real concern for the Dallas Mavericks. You move on from Jaden Hardy. He's a nice piece that can kind of go into that Washington situation and play a role situation. He didn't really pan out for the Dallas Mavericks like you thought. Maybe he'll be a part of a nice athletic tandem down there in Washington as a, an 8th, 9th, 10th man type thing. And, man, Chris Middleton, I'd imagine, is a buyout candidate. It could be really interesting to see what Dallas does with Chris Middleton. Maybe they hold on to him. But I just don't think Dallas really needs to be doing anything but showcasing young players at this point. Now, maybe you say, okay, he could be like a sturdy, helpful piece for the Dallas Mavericks, just like he was for the Wizards. The Wizards were able to turn him into this, with this trade. So maybe that's how the Dallas Mavericks look at Chris Middleton. But for me, if I'm a team like, let's say, the Lakers or Cleveland or Boston or one of these contenders, San Antonio, I'm monitoring the Middleton situation. I definitely think it's time for Middleton to be a part of a winner again. He's already proven he can win a championship. He's still capable of hitting a big jump shot. He's still a big enough body to kind of throw out there and be a part of a decent defensive team setting. So I think that Middleton probably won't be long for Dallas. I don't think so. And also keep an eye on Dallas for maybe pivoting toward another move of some sort. You know, they do have some other things they could do. Kyrie Irving, I don't think there's a place for Kyrie in Dallas anymore. I really don't. I know the fan base loves him. I know they're waiting for him to come back from injury, so I don't know if it makes sense for them to try to trade him now, if they can get the right thing for him now. But I don't know that much of his. I don't know that his price tag changes between now and the end of the season if they try to trade him in the offseason. Assuming they want to trade him at all, because I don't know that they do. But like I said, now it's about the rebuild. Cooper Flag and youth is kind of what this should be about. And if you can get something for Kyrie Irving, if you can flip him for something that's young, that you see yourself moving forward with Cooper Flag, that probably is the move. Because if he comes back from injury and you try to trade him in the deadline, what you would have had to do was bring him back so that he could be showcased. And in doing so, I don't know that you don't put him in a position to be re-injured. You know what I'm saying? I don't know that you're not risking the potential of him going back down again. So that would be my thing. It might be a little too risky. He might be a little too valuable at this point with what the idea of Kyrie Irving could be for teams, to not try to move him right now and not put yourself in a position to bring him back to a team that's not going to be winning, to potentially showcase himself well enough to be more valuable later than he is right now, only to turn around and see him get injured again. And he'll have no value at all in the offseason. It just may be a little too risky to bring him back. Sitting him for the rest of the season, do you think you'll get more for him as he continues to age without anybody seeing him on the basketball floor? I don't know that that's the case. If I'm Dallas, I'm trying to shop Kyrie now if I intend to move him. I'm trying to get something for him, send him to a contender, like the Thunder, like Utah, like teams that have a lot of picks who are trying to pivot. You know what I'm saying? Utah probably ain't the greatest example, but I'm looking at teams who see themselves as having enough draft equity in the form of players who are now ready to do what Utah did, what Washington just did. And I'm trying to see if Kyrie can fit in what they're doing, and maybe they give me a draft pick or something for Kyrie's services. A team like Houston, for example, could definitely use what Kyrie brings to the table in the second half of the season. You put him there, he could fill in, play that point guard role when he gets back. That way, if he's coming back to showcase himself, he's showcasing himself for a purpose of winning, rather than coming back to a Dallas situation that doesn't want to win, but it's going to send him out there hoping he plays his best ball so they can have his trade value go up. That doesn't make as much sense to me for their circumstance. Dallas should probably try to trade him now. So that's what I'm thinking. If they decide to trade him at all, I know he's, like I said, he's a cult figure there. Everybody loves Kyrie Irving everywhere he goes, pretty much. And, you know, you love having him in the locker room, but at this point, with AD out, why does he need to be there? Is the question I have for that team. So, yeah, man, that's what I'm looking at. That is exactly what comes to mind for me when I'm talking about the Dallas Mavericks. They just, at this point, Middleton and Kyrie seem expendable. I know they like Najee Marshall a lot, but his trade value is up. People have seen him play very well for you. Maybe cashing out early on him is smart. You know, this is probably the best opportunity to get something for him, because I don't think he's as good as he's been for you. And if he goes back to being who he was in the past, the trade value goes down. Same thing with Caleb Martin. He's playing great ball right now. If you can get a second-round pick for him, shed him out of there, that's smart. Like, you gotta know when to cash out on people, man. That's the Dallas Mavericks. You gotta know when to cash out. I know you don't want to bottom all the way out around Cooper Flag, have him playing with a bunch of trash, but you do also want to get your best opportunity at the best pick possible and to capitalize on everything that's win now. Get it all off your team so you can just, you know, bottom out properly without guys just being off for the ride for no reason. So I know they like Najee Marshall, but I'm moving him too. He's out of here if I have control over the Mavericks. We start over. Just like, as I said yesterday in regards to KCP with the Memphis Grizzlies, you got to get these win-now guys out of those situations. They have no business being there. If you're pivoting to suck, get the win-now dudes up out of there, man. Don't have them around. And certainly don't let the trade deadline pass without you shopping them. because a lot of times it ends with you, stretching them or waving them. And that should be worst case scenario for all teams. So I guess I'll give up on my phone, man. I don't think it's going to work here. I've been trying to reset, and I've done everything I can to try to get this thing to work for me, but it's not doing its part, man. So at this point, I guess I will get up out of here, man. And just want to tell everybody that I think this is a pretty good trade for both teams. I think, when it really comes down to it, you just want to pivot in the right direction for yourself. The Wizards, I believe, have done that. And the Mavericks look like they're on the verge of doing that, but they still have more work. So that's pretty much what I'm able to give you, man. I wish I knew what these contracts look like. My damn phone is not cooperating. So that's pretty much what I got to say. My name is BDL44. I thank y'all for watching.